what I can do today. Without a doubt. Like I think a lot of it is just habitual at this point,
Hmm.
where I know how I can make myself feel more comfortable about the situation. And a lot of it now for me is just it's just preparation. Like what when I go into a situation well prepared, when there's notes that I've prepared ahead of time, or when I've rehearsed a particular speech or a particular conference topic or something like that, once I've got that and done run through it a couple of times and I have the basic like framework in my brain already, maybe some little bullet points just to remind me of what I'm doing, then I know I'm going to be all right.
So, Connor, welcome to the CX Files. It's great to have you. How are you doing?
I am doing great, thanks, Ben. I appreciate the invitation. It's lovely, lovely to be here. I don't want to shock anyone, but it is actually sunny in Birmingham in the UK, and the UK meaning England. So we do get decent weather here. So things are really good.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I have some family, not in Birmingham, but roughly in that region of England, and as well as around London. And I've been meaning to get back to visit, but I'll have to save that for another time.
Yeah. Well, you will be very welcome here, I promise.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I love to travel. Right now, I'm in Kyoto, Japan, and looking to go back to the U.S. Soon this year. Um, and one of the things that I always like to ask guests is, to tell some stories. So whether you have a travel story or another story about an adventure or a challenge you've been on, maybe something in your career or personal life, something you can share with us about your past a little bit.
Yeah. Does it have to relate to psychology? Can it
It
be
can be
totally out of the blue or
anything.
to anything?
Go for it.
Anything? Okay, well actually, you know what? Here's something totally out of the blue that relates to what we're doing today, which is like having conversations and telling stories, telling stories. And that is that for a very long time in Ireland, so I'm ha, well, I like to say I'm half Irish. I like to say actually is I'm half Irish, half English, and half New Zealanders. But I swear that adds up to one person. And what I did for a very long time in Ireland was I actually was as part of the marriage equality campaign, so campaigning for marriage rights for same-sex couples, was I was one of the people who did a lot of talking in support of the referendum that we had. So just totally separate to customer support or customer success, I had about a decade of practicing speaking to larger groups or speaking on radios, speaking in newspaper interviews. I was even on the longest running TV, was it the longest running panel show in the world? It's something like that. It's called the Late Late Show, which is in Ireland, and it's the longest running current affairs or something, one of those shows. And so totally separate from anything else. I had this decade when I think I was probably about 50, maybe it started when I was about 16 and ran until I was about 26, 27, where I got to talk to people because my parents were a same-sex couple. They were two women who met in London and we moved back to Ireland together. And so I got to practice practice talking to groups of people and practice storytelling long before it ever became useful in a work context and in a business context. So that's that's like it's not exactly travel, but it's an adventure. I would describe it as an adventure without a doubt. Like I'd have these really funny moments. I remember getting on the bus once, a couple of days after I'd done a TV interview, and the bus driver was like, "Oh, you're the guy from the TV. Come on." It's just really nice to me. It's just you'd get spotted sometimes doing these things, but
Hmm.
it was lovely. It was a really big adventure. I'm reminded of it because I was talking to someone who's from Ireland over the weekend, and I got to talk to her about it as well, and she was really excited to talk in more detail about it. So that's an adventure from my past that I don't think I've ever mentioned it on any podcast that I've been on so far. So that's a good one to talk through.
Yeah, I mean that's quite a it must have been quite an adventure. You said it started when you were 16 years old.
I think I must have been around there. Maybe I was slightly older, but it was great. It was friends of our family were running one of the many, there were quite a few groups campaigning for marriage equality in Ireland or campaigning for civil partnership for same-sex couples or a variation of that legal recognition.
Hmm.
And then eventually they all merged together for the actual marriage equality campaign and put aside all of their differences and campaigned for a shared goal. And so one of those groups spoke to us from a relatively early level, and what they wanted at first was just like, hey, we just want to hear from you and like make sure that everything's all right, but also get a qualitative kind of insight into life. Who talks to you about having two moms? What kind of trouble happens as a result of having two moms, both from a like a boring legal perspective of because there's really important inheritance issues, there's really important recognition issues, there's really important like the worst part of life becomes more difficult when you don't have that kind of legal recognition. But you
Right.
also like, is there bullying associated with it or anything like that? So they were doing
Hmm.
that sort of research about it, but it also led into them seeing certain people from that group and thinking, okay, heck, they're really good at telling the story already. Can we give them a little bit of support to grow that and to get more experience at it? And then can we introduce them to nice journalists who will be gentle with these children and talk to them kindly and just get the practice that way, and then building it up over time. So we had a pretty big repertoire of conversations by the end of it, just across, like I said, across newspapers, TV. We even had actually a documentary about our family. All these memories flooding back. We had like a 30-minute documentary about our family on one of the TV networks back in Ireland, and that was great fun. Actually, so do you know the TV show Big Brother, the
Yeah,
reality
I've heard of
TV
it.
show?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a former guest from a former star on that, Anna Nolan, she was the one who hosted the TV show that we were on. She's quite well known in Ireland. Yeah, so it was just yeah, it was exciting. It was fun. It was great. It was overwhelmingly positive. Like almost all the feedback we got was positive, and obviously there was a lot of it was not a great time in a lot of ways, but by comparison with what a lot of other people go through, I really enjoyed it, and it was really good fun, and I was glad to do what I could do to get marriage equality across the line in Ireland.
Yeah, I think that there's so many people in the world who have a story to tell, and maybe they have a campaign that they're a cause that they're working towards, like marriage equality or other things. But um, a lot of people struggle with the public speaking part, speaking to groups, commanding attention, everybody kind of looking up at you like a puppy dog, from the audience, and it's just you can hear like the what is it, that sound that the microphone makes when it like echoes off of the speakers, right? And it's just
Feedback,
silence.
yeah, you get the
All these
feedback.
kinds of things, right? The feedback, all these kinds of things that like make people feel super nervous about public speaking, right? And here you are at 16, like out there, it sounds like you kind of started small and then it built up over time. But
It did.
um, I think that you know public speaking or just speaking to groups of people is such a powerful skill, and to have a chance, in a meaningful way to develop that early on. um, I can understand how it's quite a strong memory for you.
Yeah, and I think it does help with what I can do today, without a doubt. Like I think a lot of it is just habitual at this point,
Hmm.
where I know how I can make myself feel more comfortable about the situation. And a lot of it now for me is it's just preparation. Like when I go into a situation well prepared, when there's notes that I've prepared ahead of time, or when I've rehearsed a particular speech or a particular conference topic or something like that, once I've got that and done run through it a couple of times and I have the basic like framework in my brain already, maybe some little bullet points just to remind me of what I'm doing, then I know I'm going to be all right. If not, I'll be a little bit embarrassed, but it's probably not the worst thing in the world. The stakes are pretty low now, you know. Like if I'm talking at a conference, it's mostly about customer support. If it doesn't go great, then it's probably not gonna devastate a large group of people. So
Right,
it's
right.
fine.
Yeah, I mean, but put it in that context, I think definitely a different rating on the pressure meter. Um,
Yeah.
I think yeah, but one of the things that I'm not sure exactly how I found your information. I think I was looking at LinkedIn, scrolling through my feed, and I saw something about your newsletter, or somebody had reposted your post or commented on one of your posts or something, and it just immediately was very clear to me that, like, wow, Connor is very good at communicating. He speaks very clearly, or at least writes very clearly, in this case. And I know you have a successful newsletter that's growing more and more subscribers, and you've got a lot of editions of that out. But the you know I'm just trying to connect the thread here a little bit, because I think that there's this communication thread for you that it feels like it's a really strong one. Um, if you're going to continue to connect the dots here for me, you've got kind of public speaking, you've got the newsletter and your consultancy, and are there more kind of points along this line of this communication thread that you could speak to?
Probably. Like I think a lot of communication comes down to you should actually understand what you're trying to get across. That
Mm.
sounds really basic, but
Set the intention.
set the intention and understand what is it that you actually want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you don't have something to say, maybe just like scale it back and don't do it. This is one of the challenges. So for those who don't know, I write a daily email to customer support professionals and customer support leaders. And so there's a couple of parts of that. Number one, it is every day. It's actually every weekdays because I don't want to do it on the weekends. Thank you very much. And it's to a specific audience. And
Mm-hmm.
it's almost always going to be about something that I want them to understand. And the biggest part of it, I think the most critical part, is there will be one core idea in there. So that's basically a little device that I've created that makes it easy to know whether I'm doing the right thing when I'm sending an email. Like there should be one useful thing. So it keeps it short and focused, and it
Mm-hmm.
means that when I'm writing it and when I'm editing it, I can take out a lot of fluff and I can shrink it down. And if it's like accidentally got 2 or 3 points in it, then I'm like, cool, that's tomorrow's topic sorted, and that's the next day, the
Right.
next topic sorted. But just this one, excuse me, just having one idea means I can hit send. Um, and then you can apply that to the rest of your writing, though. You don't have to start a daily email list if you don't want to, dear listener. If you want to apply the idea to your own writing, when you're sending a Slack message, understand what you actually want to say. Don't wait until you're 7 messages deep to start thinking about what you want to say. Just take a short pause. I know a lot of the tools we use encourage like really fast writing and minimal editing realistically, but just take a pause, take a beat, and say, okay, why am I sending a message here? What do I actually want people to understand from what I'm saying? It's the same with email. It's the same with something like a podcast. It's the same with sharing a post on LinkedIn. Like you don't, there should be a core message to what you're saying. Sometimes, sometimes it's just like I want to share how I'm feeling about something, which is fine. But actually keep an eye on what that is
Mm-hmm.
and why you want it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe like I know so uh, peeking behind the curtain a little bit, we had tied together some more of my background to what we would talk about today. But I think it actually does come back to, so I studied psychology at an undergraduate and master's level, and I actually think part of that idea of like just know what you want to actually do comes back to the approach that you take in science, really, and you see in psychology, although a lot of people dismiss it as a science because it's to do with people, so it can't possibly be to do with science. But that's sociology, and sociology is obviously way worse than psychology. So, and I'm only just teasing. So in like when you're doing an experiment, you actually have to start at the end and start with the like, what do you actually want to test before you set anything else up? And it's the same idea in the communication as well. Like start at the end and then work backwards from there, really.
Yeah, I think there's there's definitely a good lesson there, and I feel like there's a larger topic of business acumen as well, of which good communication, clear communication, intentional communication is very much a part of it. Um, and I wanted to ask you a little bit, talking about your, I think it was 9 years that you were at Expensify, and there's quite a
Mhm.
large progression of your career while you were there. Um, and it must have taken a lot of business acumen to achieve that. And I think there's a lot of people in the customer success, in customer support, in customer operations that they want to level up, and maybe compared to some other departments, it's not so clear how to do that. Um, can you speak a little bit to your experiences with kind of the ladder there, and kind of maybe some lessons about business acumen and how that helped?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is funny. So I had started a company before I joined Expensify, and I worked in there for a year. And there's a lot of other context, but the end state of that was my realization that I should like that I don't have the critical sales skills necessary to to get what I wanted done in that earlier company. And so I was like, okay, I'll join a startup and I'll join sales and I will learn how to do it. And then I'll go and do my own thing afterwards. So I joined, I actually, I sent in a very general application back, this is back in the halcyon days of 2014, where you could get actually get a job pretty easily. Um, and I sent in a general application and got hired actually as a sales generalist, where you just sort of do sales. It was a very small company at the time. There were only 30. I was the 35th person to join. And I did 1 week of an introduction to sales. And then on the second week, they were like, actually, we're creating this team that will like manage our highest value customers and manage the relationships with them and interact with them and project manage all of the projects that they're doing and be the relationship holder with them and renew their contracts every year and all these kind of things. And you get really deep on the troubleshooting with them. And I was just like, this sounds really cool. And so I actually just totally switched. On the second week, I totally switched. And so I guess actually, yeah, so that was what my first change was within a week of joining Expensify. They had this new team and it aligned really well with my interests and my skill sets as well. And from there, a lot of a lot of what made Expensify or makes Expensify great, I think, is that you can really go outside of your own team as much as you want to. A lot of that is challenging when you have a full-time job and you're trying to do more parts of a different job. So it's not quite the option as it was at the beginning for me because I now have two children and like real world responsibilities. But
Hmm.
it was always a context that was very welcoming of experimentation and change and moving between teams and expanding your responsibilities. But also the expectation was you are not in a single team, you are part of the wider company. And that the expectation was not like sales would fight with marketing. It was like, okay, well, we are doing sales or we are doing marketing, but we're not just not like there were very loose walls between like there were no as few walls as possible between all the different teams. So it was the default was you should not be just limiting your interactions to a single team. It was very rare that you'd have team meetings, for example. If you did have team meetings, everyone would be invited and everyone would be involved across the whole company. Again, it's the advantage of having a smaller company, and you could interact there. And so what I did was I just became more and more curious about what was going on everywhere else. And when there was
Curiosity.
product changes, that yeah, curiosity was what was really valued. Like when we were launching new products, you'd bring the curiosity to the marketing side of things and think, okay, well, how are we describing this? And are we making sure that what we're actually describing in the marketing materials ties back to the actual product experience so that us on the customer facing side of things, we don't get disappointed customers who churn immediately after they realize that they can't do what they've been marketed and sold, and they can't use their product. And so
Right.
being curious and then just being confident in delivering a perspective there as well. So I think it was a lot of curiosity that happened in there, and a lot of permission to experiment there as well, which was really helpful. And that's what it definitely leads to long tenure at a company like Expensify. Like I was coming up on 10 years when I left, and I was sort of mi kind of middle of the pack in terms of tenure. It is a bit astonishing to think, but there were a bunch of people hired after me, obviously, but there were a lot of people. There were probably still another 25 people who'd been there longer than me when I left. And that's kind of I look at people's LinkedIn now and I see every sort of 3 years they have a new role. And yeah, that's at a different company, obviously. And that's incredible to me. In my brain, I'm like, oh, 3 years, such a what a blink of an eye. Time flies. How would you how do you even know what your job is after 3 years? And yeah,
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I think there's a few things I'm picking up on from what you said. So the one thing I called out already is curiosity, right? Just being interested in what other people are doing in other departments, I think is something that, you know, don't go into your own room. Don't put up the walls around what you're doing, even if that's maybe not your company culture to share, widely what everybody else is doing. You can kind of, at in the lunchroom, so to speak, by the water cooler, whatever it takes, you can kind of, be curious and kind of hear, oh, oh, what's sales doing? Oh, what's marketing doing? And you can kind of pick up little pieces, and then, ultimately that can inform you, and that can help, kind of focus in, back on what you're doing, and how you can, kind of help the company win, right? Which ultimately helps your own career, of course.
exactly.
So there's that curiosity piece, and I think that's kind of underrated, I think, generally. Um, the other thing that you were talking about is this long tenure and this kind of this. There's a lot of people that stayed a long time at Expensify, and I think you're kind of highlighting how it was a good company culture. I mean, there's a reason why people stayed there for a long time, and it wasn't only money, right? It's
That
because,
definitely helped, I'll be honest.
well, money doesn't
Money
hurt, right?
definitely helps.
But you can't pay people enough to do a terrible job.
Mm,
They'll just quit. Like, there's a certain
yeah.
price that, people are willing to suffer for a certain amount more money. But if it's endless suffering, they're just going to leave, right? Um,
Mhm.
so I think that there's certainly something to be said for finding a company that has an enlightened culture. An open culture certainly is important, where people are welcome to hear what's going on in other departments. They're welcome to join meetings and kind of, branch out a little bit. Um, so, maybe all these people who are jumping careers every, not careers, but jumping jobs every, 3 years or something, maybe they're trying to find that Expensify, that place where they really feel, good. I mean, I know there's sort of
Yeah.
career advice that you should, don't ask for a promotion, but, find a new company, and that's the best way to get promoted. Um, so there's kind
Yeah.
of different
I
sides
mean,
of
I
that,
guess
but
there are like I wrote about this in my email list a couple of weeks ago where I was talking about like you have to have the right person in the right company within the right role at the right time. And it is those like those four factors are really important. Where if you've got the wrong person and the right role, right company, right time, that's not going to work. If you've got the wrong company, that's not going to work. If you've got the wrong time, that's not going to work. Because the Expensify that I joined in 2014 is vastly different to the Expensify of 2021, 2022,
sure.
2023. And you have to have different skill sets and you have to have different interests over time as well. And
Hmm.
also, as you're saying, like people's priorities do change.
Right.
If you're suddenly I don't know, if you're suddenly like wildly interested in climate tech because you're concerned about the state of the climate for some reason, I don't know,
Maybe because we live in it.
then oh yeah, there are. It's, actually, most of us live here. What are we doing?
It's like
And
not being concerned about your
then
house.
yeah, yeah, exactly,
Care
yeah.
about my house, doesn't matter.
Then
Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
then that might be the right reason to make a switch.
Right.
But it's got to work. It's got to work across all four of those factors really.
Yeah.
And 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 so sometimes it will make sense to just stay in the same company and decide to try push onwards and change your role and get more responsibilities and take on different leadership roles. And sometimes it won't. Sometimes you will need to move across teams and move outside of it. But if you're listening to this right now, don't leave unless you've got a new job lined up. Just a hot tip there that everyone probably already knows.
Yeah, I think the job market in recent years. That's a whole other podcast. But um,
Yeah.
I one of the other threads that you mentioned I wanted to hit on is kind of hearing what sales is doing, hearing what marketing is doing, and then kind of connecting that to, okay, this is the promise that we're making to customers, and then fulfilling that comes down to, in B2B it's going to be customer success team probably, B2C it's going to be
Yeah.
customer support team probably, right? Um,
Hmm.
but traditionally it's sales and marketing make the money, and support or success tries to save cost, right?
Yes.
And kind of reduce losses, right? um,
Mm.
but more and more people are talking about this idea of support contributing to revenue and kind of tracking that support, or let's say
Yeah.
customer facing teams, support and success as well. In customer success, it's a lot about saving churn, right? Like stopping the customers from leaving, like keeping them happy. And in support, maybe it's more about like upselling people, or if it's a subscription, B2C, you try to get them to renew again, try to get them not to cancel,
Yeah.
and so on. Um, but historically, it's been hard to kind of track that impact, and
Yeah.
maybe it's
Yeah.
easier on the success side than it is on the support side. But I think there's
Yeah.
this idea of like the CX people having a say in the revenue conversation as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, it always sounds like it just sounds silly to me because who's interacting with the people who actually pay a company money? It's actually
Right.
not marketing and it's not sales. It's going to be your support teams, your success teams, your CX teams. They're the ones who are actually engaging with the people who are paying you money actively. So, and that's not to denigrate the work that marketing sales do. They're critical parts of any company. But just assuming that the support and success and CX are like only there to cost money and to mitigate risk is I always think is very short-sighted. This is your opportunity to find out how to deliver the best possible product and service to your customers today and into the future by having great relationships and a great understanding of your product, of how it's used by your customers and how the market is shifting around your customers and with how your customers' needs are changing. And the people who do that are going to be your customer support teams, customer success teams, and customer experience teams. And within that as well, I think, yeah, of course, there are cross-sell opportunities, there are upsell opportunities, there are expansion opportunities. You should be looking for those if you're customer facing. That's your way of increasing revenue. These are your opportunities to actually expand and deliver on what you can deliver over time. And I maybe it's just because I kind of cheat because I focus on B2B customer support. And so in my mind it's very easy because it's like, well, these are businesses and they don't really care if they're paying twice as much, if they're getting four times as much value. So if we focus in that way, if you're viewing it through that lens, then I think it's very clear that this is not just a cost center. This is not just a risk mitigation revenue, keeping it as high as possible while losing as little as possible to churn. I think it's very clear that it's beyond just that, and we
Mm-hmm.
as leaders in this space should act accordingly and take that responsibility that we have, and also just like, yeah, just say like, no, it's I'm sorry, just gonna loudly swear. It's just rubbish that it's only about those sort of risk reductions. The opportunity is here, and we're already doing the impact and having the impact, and if people are not inviting us to those conversations, then they're going to be missing out. And
Mm-hmm.
that's probably, you know what, Ben? That's a good example of when it's the right time to shift out of the company, and the like brain drain that you get from the companies who don't invest in support and success and CX is pretty significant. Like
Yeah.
you see people hopping jobs and going to better companies that actually better respect those skill sets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's clear as day for me. I think I wanted to ask you a little bit. We haven't touched on AI today. That's fine. I talk
Mm.
about it every day, I feel like. So we could talk about it if you'd like, but just briefly, I wanted to get your thoughts a little bit on where you see things going in the future as far as um, customer support, customer success, customer operations. Um, what are the things that you think are going to be changing in the next year or 2 years?
Yeah. I think, yeah, I also talk about AI a lot, and I'm glad I've written this a couple of times recently, but I'm glad that we're talking about more than just chatbots now when we say AI, because I think there are a lot of other tools that are out there that are really great. And then also, like, just to focus more on chatbots, actually it's quite difficult to set up to get it working really well. Like, there's a lot of what unless you when you have a simple setup, or when you have a simple knowledge base, like a monolingual single product experience, that's great. It works really well. But once you get to the complexity of having multiple different products, or you have lots of different integrations, or you have different languages that you want to support, or you have different user types, it actually takes quite a lot to set that up
Mm-hmm.
and then to maintain it over time. And so it's not quite the like turn it on and all the magic just works.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot to iterate on and invest in there, and I think the work it's really worth it as well. I think I think the opportunities for us that we're seeing are the ability to actually allow our human people, allow our human agents, allow our actual employees to focus on valuable interactions with customers, and better, it goes back to what I was talking about a second ago, better understand our customers, better understand our product and how it's actually being used, and better understand how our customers' needs are changing over time, and
Mm-hmm.
how we can move with them, and those opportunities up front. So I think those are the opportunities that you won't be able to replace with AI, because the curiosity is helpful and useful and valuable, but also you need to be able to pull apart the details a little bit more in ways that I haven't seen AI really do very well so far. And yeah, I suspect that that's what we're going to see more and more of. Like, if you think about a typical customer success manager, they're going to be, I hope, better empowered to have high fidelity, that's the yeah, high fidelity conversations. This word that I've latched onto recently that I'm just reusing over and over. They're going to be having quality based conversations with groups of people, and doing less of the like, I'm sending 200 messages this week, and the hope to get sort of 4 replies back. So I
Right.
suspect that that's what we'll have more of, is a lot of the outreach kind of messages will be taken care of automatically. A lot of the inbound customer support conversations will be taken care of automatically, and we can focus on those more meaningful engagements with our customers a
Mm-hmm.
lot more effectively. That's certainly what I'm setting up. That's certainly what I'm working on, and that's what I'm prioritizing. My priority isn't like empower someone from the C-suite to fire 80% of a customer support team. That's not what I'm interested in. It's not what I really want to support either.
Well, and I think that we've seen some companies that kind of move too quickly, jump
Yeah.
too high, um, with this AI stuff, and it came back to bite
Hmm.
them. I think one of the things you're touching on, I just want to mention here briefly before we wrap up the episode, is this idea that like there's people who really need a human touch, and it's really the most impactful. Is that you have, I think of them as like kind of undecided. If you think of them as like
Hmm.
voters, right? You have like people who are definitely voting yes, they love you. People who are definitely voting no, they're leaving. And then there's people in the
Yeah.
middle where you can actually make an impact and kind of sway them, right? And those are
Yeah.
the folks that benefit the most from these high fidelity conversations that you're talking about, right? And you also can learn the most from them. They're the people who actually have some capacity to change
Hmm.
direction, right? Or some
Yeah,
willingness.
exactly. If you bring it all the way back to what we were talking about at the beginning with the marriage equality campaign, yeah, like that's the people who you actually have to convince. It's the people who haven't quite fully decided yet, or the people who like might not show up in the first place. So
Mm-hmm.
they're not invested enough. They're not personally attached to an issue. They're not personally attached to marriage equality, for example. They've forgotten that they have friends who are gay or who are lesbians, or they have a cousin who's a lesbian and wants to be able to get married to their partner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those people you actually have to convince. It's the people who are not the full detractors and definitely won't do it, or not the full supporters and are like super gung ho. Like you do have to engage with them. But the people you should be spending most of your time on exactly is like the messages and the ideas and the spaces that those people who don't know or won't show up.
Hmm.
Those people, I think, are the people to spend the time on, definitely.
Absolutely. Connor, it's been a pleasure. That's all of our time for today. I have so many more questions I'd like to ask you. There's so many more things I'd love to hear your perspective on. We'll have to record another episode at some point in the future. But thank you so much, everybody. This has been the CX Files with Conor Pendergrast. And if you'd like to check him out, check out CustomerSuccess.cx and subscribe to the newsletter. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.